Good morning, developers. Today is JavaScript Tuesday. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Rob, and Tuesday is the day that we look at something directly related to JavaScript as a language or Node.js. So putting away React and WebSockets and Vue and Next and all that stuff and just go straight to native JavaScript. How can we get better at the core? And at the moment, we are doing the ECMAScript updates, and today happens to be ES14 or ECMAScript 2023. We are going to look at findLast and findLastIndex. If you've been around JavaScript for very long, this is going to be more about making you aware they exist, because they are exactly the opposite of find and findIndex. Find all is in there too, and index of, so they all kind of do the same thing, but we want to find an element in an array. We can start from the end rather than from the beginning. Let's go over to VS Code and take a look quick. We will start off in the docs. I've got MDN opened to findLast, and it is an array prototype method, meaning if you're an array, you have the findLast method. And the description is pretty much what we just said. It is a method on arrays that iterates the array in reverse order. Otherwise, it is the same as find. Find just starts from the beginning. findLast starts at the end and returns the value of the first element that satisfies the provided function. If it can't find anything, then it returns undefined. And real quick, we can look at this. These are, if you want to find stuff in an array, these are the various methods you have. Going from the beginning, meaning the first element that matches, you use find. findLastIndex, we'll come back to that. If you want the index itself, starting from the beginning, index of, you can hand it a value. You don't hand it a callback. You hand it like a string or a number, and it will tell you where that's at in the array. findIndex does the same thing, but just like findLast or find, you hand it a callback. So we've got an object, and we need to know the index where it's at. That's when you'd use findIndex as opposed to index of. If you want to know if it simply exists in the array, you'd use includes. That's the same as index of, where you give it a value saying, I just is the number 3 in this array. You'd use includes. If you needed an actual callback, like a testing function, then you would use sum. And it's funny because all of these, with the exception of findLastIndex, have been in JavaScript forever. It's strange that it took them so long to add this, but I'll show you in a second. The really great use case for this is performance-based, because recently I had an array that was in the thousands, potentially millions, and I know that the thing is towards the end, and I'll show you that. But rather than starting from the beginning and looking all the way through, we can save so much processing power by starting from the end. I didn't know what index it was specifically, otherwise I would have gone directly to it. But I needed to find the element and get some data from it or edit it or whatever. Starting from the end, if you've got millions of elements, this is exactly what you need, because it will be so much more performant. They give an example with some numbers. We'll pass over that. The syntax, you provided the callback function. Optionally, you can get a this from it if you want. But the callback itself, just like find, has the element as the first thing. So that's the element in the array as we're looping through it from the end rather than from the beginning. And then if you want the index, you have the index. And then I never use this, but if you wanted the array for some reason, you can grab it there as well. Okay? If we hop over to VS Code, I have findless.html open. I'm using HTML because it's easier to read the console in the browser, and more people will be familiar with it. We've got script tags at the beginning and the end. If you want to use Node.js, by all means, please do. I have defined an array called sockets, and this was my recent use case where I have sockets that are joining a WebSocket server. You can think about this like HTTP. You've got people that are sending AJAX or fetch requests or Axios, whatever. And as people are coming in, you are keeping track of where they are at. Well, you don't know what order they're going to come in. JavaScript's async. So somebody maybe gets added to this array, but before the rest of our code runs, someone else might get added to that array. I know that what I'm looking for was just added. I just don't necessarily know that it's the last one. So as a for instance, I've got 3 objects in here. These are sort of like WebSocket IDs. Don't worry if you don't know what WebSocket is. It doesn't matter. These are just objects where we've got an ID, another object with an ID, and another object with an ID. And I know the ID of the one I'm looking for, but I don't know what index it's in, and I know it's towards the end. And I've got maybe millions of these things. So I go looking for it, and I do found socket, and I'm going to set that equal to, we'll go to sockets and we'll do find. We are looking for, well, the element we're looking for, I'm going to call it S. We're looking for s.id equals 2. Okay, and if I console.log the found socket here, it is going to return Pavan. So coming over to the browser, opening up our object here, you can see it did its job. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. But as I said, I had maybe millions, and I don't want to start from the very beginning because he was just added, and maybe Pavan, instead of being number 2, is like 20 million or 2 million or whatever. So in that case, again, I don't know specifically the index he's in. We would search for that, and instead of find, we would do findLast. The result is going to be exactly the same. It's just going to be way more performant. Now, the other obvious use case is if you happen to have the same ID in here, the same object over and over, and it was something like this, number 4, and this one was also Pavan. We need the last case where Pavan shows up to find out what ID that is, right? Maybe this is a customer database or something like that. So down here, instead of looking for the ID, we're looking for the name, and we're gonna go hunting like that. Come back over here and refresh, and now it finds the last one, of course, as opposed to changing this over to find, and we refresh our code and it gets the first one. Okay, very straightforward, very useful. You mostly just need to be aware that this exists. If we come back over to the docs here, findLastIndex does the exact same thing, but instead of returning the element to which we can edit or pull data out of, if we need the index, it does the same thing, just gets us the index instead of the element. So we do find last, and I'll put in here index. And again, we're going to look for Pavan, and it's going to kick back 0, 1, 2, 3, the 3 index. So back over here, refresh, and sure enough, we get 3. Just to finish rounding out the docs, there is a little gotcha here. Going to scroll down to the description. This is an iterative method, and so is, if we come over to find last, iterative method, it is going to run the callback function one time for every element until it returns a truthy value, meaning it found the thing. Once it finds it, it's going to stop iterating through the array. That's the performant element that I mentioned. This saves us time the faster we can get to that element. Okay, here's the gotcha. It is invoked for every index, not just those with assigned values. Meaning, if it's a sparse array, you are going to run it on all of the empty slots. What is a sparse array? Well, if we come back over here and do sockets, and I'm going to go straight to index 10,000, and I'm going to throw in here an ID of 10,000, and I'm going to put in a name of Eddie. Okay? We now have a massive empty array. So I'll console.log sockets, and we'll go look at it. Okay, so we're back here. It has 9,996 empty spots. But when it runs, it is going to consider those undefined. It's going to run all 10,000 times. And you can see we got an error here because when it hit this first empty one, which is going to be in slot 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, there is no name property because it's not an object, it's undefined. Okay, so that's something to be aware of. You cannot treat it like this. Now, the way that I handle that is I would run, if you run flat, so sockets.flat on my line 26 here, come back over and refresh, it will remove all of those sparse elements. The reason we still got the error is because we're running it on sockets. If I do sockets.flat here, open, close, we won't get that error anymore because it's only running them on valid elements. So just something to be aware of. But that pretty much rounds us out. There's a couple more examples if you're wanting to look for a little bit more information on how to handle a couple different places. But this is supported widely across all browsers going back to the summer of 2023. Thanks for watching. You can check out other JavaScript Tuesdays. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.